I know that the rest of the black media has already weighed in on this, but I had to throw my 2 cents in regardless about the great Duh-Bate. It was yet another masterpiece of talking a lot while saying absolutely nothing. You ask the Georgian people, particularly black Georgians, what Raphael Warnock said that he would do for them, and they can't even tell you. In fact, if you ask them to name anything that Warnock's going to do other than make sure that abortion remains legal, they still can't answer that question. See, this is why it's dangerous to allow politicians to substitute a spitball fight for what is supposed to be the airing of real tangibles for their constituencies. Now, putting aside the lame attempts at zingers, the gotcha moments that didn't catch anything, and the half-brained theatrics, what was there from either candidate that was worth voting for? I didn't hear anything at all. But Raphael Warnock did make it clear that he was not the Trump candidate, that Donald Trump would have nothing to do with his policies whatsoever. That's just simply telling me what he's against. He never said what he was for, other than abortion. But Warnock said nothing about black issues or black interests, and that's the thing that's of most concern to black people. It was all about Herschel Walker's lack of character. But Warnock didn't even do a good job of ripping Walker a new one on that. This was the epitome of the complaint that political debates are nothing more than joint press conferences. Both of these guys stuck to their pre-canned talking points, saying absolutely nothing new, nothing different, or particularly interesting, nothing that we hadn't heard before. So about the best thing that you can say about this debate was that it ended. Even the left corner of the white media wasn't really able to say what Warnock did that was so great. They had to admit that he was holding back. That's another way of saying we're going to claim that he won the debate when the truth of the matter is he simply didn't embarrass himself.
You know, Greg, something I found interesting, Yamiche Alcindor, our colleague, was in Georgia talking to voters a few days after some of these stories had begun to emerge about Herschel Walker. And people who were Walker supporters, they really seemed to be pretty unmoved by these revelations. And I thought it was interesting tonight that Warnock really didn't touch the personal accusations, stayed pretty far from them. And I wonder what you made of that dynamic.
The reason Warnock didn't go in on Walker and that abortion claim was because Warnock knows that it's irrelevant to black voters. The whole abortion riff, the audience for that rhetoric is mostly white suburban women. And you can tell that Warnock had been told by his DNC handlers, you want to make sure you say that more than a few times, make sure they don't forget about it. And by the way, I'm not cutting Herschel Walker, the walking CTE case, any kind of slack. Of course, we don't expect that clown to do anything for anyone. The man can barely form a coherent sentence. Oh, forget about barely. He can't form a coherent sentence. So we're not expecting anything from that clown. But the truth of the matter is, he was in there trying to put on his most pious routine. Now, if you're going to talk about black pregnancies, especially in the quote-unquote black Mecca of Atlanta, I want to know what either candidate promised to do about the black infant mortality rate. Black babies are intentionally, deliberately, systematically across the board denied proper care. Black babies are completely and thoroughly ignored by hospital staff, and that's not an accident. That is American medical policy. So what did either candidate say that they were going to do about the black infant mortality rate? What were they going to do to make sure that hospitals who kept having black babies come out in bags and kept having it where black babies were dying or otherwise would die soon after going there? What were they going to do to make sure that these hospitals got punished, that these doctors got punished? What were they going to do to even air the issue? Nothing. And what did either candidate say that they were going to do about the black maternal mortality rate? In the United States, black mothers are pretty much lead the league when it comes to dying. So you got Raphael Warnock claiming that he cares about women, but he can't care about black women too much because he's not doing anything to punish those who are responsible for black mothers dying, black mothers who are trying to have their children, trying to give birth. He doesn't care about that, and neither does Herschel Walker. Oh, he cares so much about births. Yeah, but he doesn't seem to care about black babies that much because he's not doing anything to punish the hospitals who are watching as black children come in there dying. These hospitals who are engineering these black babies' deaths. It's all a bunch of hot air. Black babies and black mothers are the direct victims of medical apartheid, and neither candidate said a word about that. Both parties make a big deal about abortion because it's a safe issue for them. It's a political football that doesn't cost them anything. They can go ahead and kill black babies without abortion. But the problem happens to be white women, who are the ones who you make sure that they are able to have their children safely. White women are the majority of the women in the United States, but they're not the most likely to die during childbirth. And that's how you know that there's a program at work here. Raphael Warnock didn't offer black people of any persuasion, any category, anything. And that wasn't because he didn't want to anger the white moderates, read casual racists. It's because Democrats' stated policy is to make sure black people do not expect anything from them. They want to make sure black people are conditioned. You don't need to be expecting anything. And that policy is to stay in place no matter what. If they have a choice between winning an election and promising black people anything, they will most of the time choose to lose the election rather than deliver on a promise to black people. And Biden made promises to us in 2020. He had no choice. He was forced to. Though the promises that he made were for everyone in general, but after he won office, he went back on all of it. Because as egregiously slanted as his promises were, the problem was even enacting them would have been too much for black people to have. So even partial policies that would benefit black people are too much for these Democrats to do. Even if the Democrats make promises, they have now already established at the presidential level that they'll go back on it the second they win the election. The Democrats have done a ton of damage to their credibility. Raphael Warnock hasn't even paid lip service to that reality. The white media won't make an issue of that, not for black people. Instead, their racist anti-black narrative will be that black people's demands aren't popular, anything that black people want isn't popular, people don't like it, and black people need to shut up and understand that their demands are the fringe, and they're going to lose Democrats' elections, and that's all that matters. Democrats have to win elections. Black people can go on losing their lives and their futures. So you niggers just go to the polls, vote, and stop making trouble with all these demands. The game being played by the white Democratic establishment and their black puppets is to get black people to vote for absolutely nothing, and then get you to feel good about it afterwards. What are these black misleaders in office even there for? They're in office for themselves. Always have been. And of course, the white media has to shoehorn everyone else into the discussion. Back in 2020, you had Yang, who was claiming that Asians were the ones who put Raphael Warnock in office and who delivered Georgia to Joe Biden. And now we have Hispanic commentators and politicians on cable claiming that it was the Hispanics who did it, and the Democrats need to be figuring out what they can do for Hispanics because they're the ones who are important in Georgia.
Julian, it's funny, when we talk about states that have big Latino populations, we often talk about Florida, we talk about Texas, Arizona, Nevada. Georgia is a state that has an emerging Latino electorate. I want to look at some new polling. This is national polling on Hispanic voters. Support for Democrats in Congress at 63%. It's a big number, but it is less than in previous years, kind of mirrors what we've been seeing from polling, which is that Democratic numbers are softer than Dems would want them to be, but Republicans have not been able, Julian, to seal the deal.
There is a growing, sizable Latino population in Georgia. It has also been organized, at least on the Democratic side, and it was key to helping to put Ossoff and Warnock over the top in those runoffs.
Now, if you want to know how ridiculous a strategy that is, all you got to do is look at South Texas, look at Florida, and look at New York, and you see the truth. Hispanics only claim to be people of color when they need to get the white supremacists to lay off of them, for a minute anyway. But the rest of the time, they identify as white. The United States is not stratified on the basis of class. It's stratified on the basis of race. In Latin America, there is a small, very small class structure. But when you actually look at their societies and their demographics, you immediately see that the blancos are most of the upper class. Very, very few of them are in the lower classes. And you also see that practically all the Afro-Latinos are in the lower classes. They're invisible in practically all other sectors of Latin American society. And as we've seen in Los Angeles last week, there's a lot of Hispanics who think that if they can help replicate that same racial structure here in the U.S., that it's going to benefit them somehow. Remember, Nuri Martinez, Kevin DeLeon, and Gil Cedillo are all Democrats. And they've been Democrats for decades. So what that proves is anti-black racism is completely and thoroughly compatible with the Democratic Party. So we have the white media and the Democratic Party saying that black voters are not important and not crucial here. And both of them are saying this by ignoring black people completely. So tell me again, what is it that black people are voting for in this case? The white media is showing what their narrative is going to be. If the polls are indeed accurate and Raphael Warnock's lead over Herschel Walker is genuine and he wins re-election, then it will be because of Hispanics and white suburban women. That's what the narrative will be. And the white media will be saying Democrats need to focus more on legalizing illegal aliens and on passing a federal law legalizing abortion nationwide. That's what they'll say. On the other hand, if the polls turn out to be inaccurate, or if in the weeks leading up to the election, Raphael's lead collapses and candidate Scrambled Brains wins office, then the white media will be screaming from the rooftops that it's because of black voters and black men are all becoming Trump supporters, etc., etc., etc. All of a sudden, they'll be dragging Tiffany Cross-Eyes and Joke Reed out of the woodwork, and it's going to be just like California with their gay marriage ban. What's wrong with black people? All of a sudden, they're going to remember that a black constituency is out there. Well, I say don't run from that accusation, lean into it. When they say, we lost the election and it's all you black people's fault, you tell them that's exactly right. Without the black vote, the Democrats will be a pathetic regional party, though certainly not a national one. John Fetterman is depending on Philadelphia and Pittsburgh to win his Senate race in Pennsylvania, and the same for Shapiro, who's trying to become governor of the state. But you wouldn't know it by the way they totally ignore black people. What has either of those candidates promised to do for black folks? This is the Democrats' national strategy. Now, this is usually the point where the lazy, intellectually brain-dead defeatists, who in many cases are nothing but Democrat plants, come out screaming that black people will always go for the okie doke, so you might as well just give it up. It'll never change. And they'll say that simply because of one or two elections. Well, we don't do defeatist around here. Try it, and you won't be on this channel very long. Regardless of the outcome in Georgia, we knew from the beginning this was always a marathon, not a sprint. This is not about one particular race, one particular candidate, or one particular election. The process that we've undertaken will not be some uninterrupted success story where we're going to have win after win after win. It's going to be a tug of war. That's what's going on right now. This is a battle of wills. A back-and-forth push-pull argument, and the hearts and minds of a critical mass of black people are the prize being fought over. Each of us has a part to play in this fight. A lot of people feel the exact same way you do about the situation, but the sad truth is most people are merely sitting back waiting to see who's going to have the courage to speak up first. You make sure that person is you. Be the one who speaks up. Be the one who talks to and gathers others in your neighborhood, your church, your social clubs, and organizations that you belong to. Be the one who makes sure that they know about the new voices of black media. The main reason that most people give for why it is that they did not go to any particular organization or group or that they didn't become part of any particular movement was because no one asked them to. And while it's true that a lot of them are not going to do it regardless, it's also true that a lot of them will. This is not about Democrats and Republicans. It's not about Warnock or Walker, whoever wins. This is about black people having our interests finally heard and responded to. This is about establishing what the permanent political culture of the 50 million ex-slaves who built this nation is going to be. And that political culture will be specifically for us. That political culture will be uncompromising. They've made it clear they are unashamedly anti-black, and we will be unapologetically black first. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Hildman Gallo, Big Mark, Robert Fletcher, Morris Bodden, and Keith Weston. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.